Hello everyone, and welcome all of you to Nikki Love Creative Presents with Industry Leaders, where today I'm joined by Joanna Henly. Welcome Jo, thank you so much for your time today. As a starting point, Jo, would you mind just quickly telling us a bit about yourself?
Yes, well firstly thank you for having me. I'm really honoured. This is a great project and you've amassed so many amazing interviews in less than 2 months. So yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Joanna Henly and I have worked under the name of Misled for about, 10 years and expanded from illustration and fine art into creative direction and visual creative consultation, which is something that's happening this year. And I work across many different sectors, from tech to fashion to lifestyle. And I started as an illustrator doing lots of editorial stuff, but entering loads of competitions to help with visibility and connecting with communities. So that's something that I like to talk about a lot, especially this time of year, because we've got lots of people graduating at this uncertain time and working out how to kind of branch out and how to kind of navigate the time. And yeah, I'm really excited to show some of my work today.
Yeah, brilliant.
About what I do.
I know you've got a presentation, haven't you, for us today, which is great. I love it when people show their work. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to share the screen. So what I've tried to encapsulate here is something that comes up a lot is the fact that I work in lots of different ways, and that's why it's kind of become from an artist tag, Misled, into studio, is to kind of encapsulate, and through the work that I'm going to show, to kind of appreciate all these kind of different styles, different equipments, different experiential and scaled based work. So I'm going to share my screen and here, and then I need to play here. So right, so it's all quite maximal. So even though we're talking about working from home, it's quite interesting because a lot of the work that I do is on my own. I partner with brands, and when I need to, and when a project calls for it, I will create a team, whether it's videographers, production team, animators, and so on. So it's a nice kind of rolling, exciting, large-scale project at times, but it's generally me and the client. So when I get to do work for myself and I get to create work in space, in large space, I really need to kind of fill it. So this is something that I'm super excited about doing. A lot of the projects that I've been offered and commissioned for in the past have been portraiture. I've done so much portraiture, so I always really get excited about the work that maybe involves portraiture, but is very expansive and very different. So this is a show that I did in London, which is a solo show. And I'll probably mention this later, but I did this in I think I did this in like 5 days, which is insane. And it was 8 large scale pieces and 4 huge paintings. Again, kind of time and space. This is something that I got asked to do because I was really lucky, because my work kind of, again, going back to that question about should you work in just one way, this job and my collaboration with Google working with their VR tool Tiltbrush came about, and I was approached because I had a background in large scale work, which was the sort of street art stuff that I was doing, the live scale stuff, to kind of help me with visibility when I was starting out. It also was really helpful because I had kind of like presentation skills. So I was doing a lot of workshops, and they were looking for somebody that had kind of like a different sort of area of expertise, and at the time I was doing fashion illustration. So my work is very much about navigating different areas, picking up lots of different skills and learning new techniques along the way. So I was asked to be part of the Google Academy program when Tiltbrush was presented, domestically presented, and as a tool that people could eventually buy in Europe. And because I was part of the academy, my work was sitting on their website for a few years. So I was getting all these amazing VR jobs, and it's like, okay, well, I'll get like this one, which is amazing, which is one of my favorites. And it's really hard to capture, it's really hard to plan for, because you're in space, it's three-dimensional, gravity doesn't exist, it's wild. And it comes with lots of complications because it was a new technology. So even though we had a room that was like a green space room, it was like a recording studio, which almost looked like something from Buck Rogers or Star Trek. There were just so many wall-to-wall machines, and the equipment couldn't deal with it. So this project, which we set up to do for like a day, I had something like an hour to do this, and this was with View Cinema as an ad campaign, or to support the ad campaign for the last Luc Besson film. So I'm really proud of this project. And they sent me some clips of the film, and I had to kind of create an idea and create the direction. I love the idea of working underwater, because you're in you're without gravity, it's in space, and it's just like, even though I'm not a kind of light and flashing person, it didn't matter how minimal people would say that they wanted the brief. They wanted all the brushes, all the lights, and all the sparkling things, no matter what they say. So they love this. And yeah, we just went properly disco. All of this is like strobing. It's so much fun. Again, this is another thing that I'm really super proud of. So yeah, so you can see illustration is a core part of what I do, the drawing. I work with Wacom, so this is a Wacom Tablet, their first Wacom Tablet that you can use paper. So you can take it out, it doesn't need any cables, it doesn't need to be attached to the computer, and you can just take it out. And I called on a really good friend of mine. He's a videographer, he makes music videos and he does animation. His name's Martin Thomas, and he's such a dude. And he just filmed me. I said, let's just take it out. So Wacom would send me tablets, send me needs as a kit, and I'd come up with ideas of how to present it. So it was almost kind of like the role of the storyteller. So how can we make this really fun? So this went from something that I carried around London, from Kew Gardens to the V&A, and on the Tube. And then I really wanted to do more mural work, so I worked with an existing client in this incredible boutique. Excuse the quality, this is a frame from the video, and we did this gorgeous mural and window. And it was really nice because it was the opportunity of taking something that was a technical piece of kit and going, right, what do I actually want to do? What do I want to kind of platform here? What do I want to present and help generate more of? And it was the mural work. So that was really exciting. It's quite interesting because this is quite an old project, but it's been getting a lot of attention recently. I popped this in, and I've had loads of professional photos of this, but I put this up on Instagram and a load of people got in touch. And obviously this is just a mobile phone picture, and it's kind of, I've been speaking to a lot of artists, and I spoke to you, Nikki, about this idea of like the long game, and sometimes you can make a connection with a person, or you can make a connection with a project even. And something might spark a very, very long time down the road. So that's quite interesting, and I'm going to bounce off this project soon for another project. I think this is 2015, so it's quite interesting. yeah, sometimes your work can be a bit ahead of the game, which is nice. So it's always good to return to work, look at your old pieces and kind of go into the archives and go, well, what did I learn about this? And yeah, so that's quite exciting. And then this again connects to this kind of long game, and how, you know, sometimes you might give your business card to someone, you might have this nice connection, and, or somebody might get in touch and go, oh, I'd really like you to do this job, and it doesn't happen, or it doesn't work out. This is a 6th floor, I quote, state-of-the-art venue, academy store office in LA that I got asked to create these kind of hair patterns, these hairlines, because this is the only wall, I think, in the whole space. It's all divided by, because they wanted it super light on the top of this huge rock in Culver City, and it's all white window panels, it's all glass, so they needed, if you see on the right here, it's quite faint, these kind of this patterning. So over 6 floors we needed these kind of like hairlines, and this came after a job that I did like 6 years ago, a really boring job for the commissioner. He was my point of contact, and I did hair drawings for a cutting manual for an academy, so I couldn't talk about it. It was really boring. And we kept in touch. He followed me on Instagram, and then all those years later, he said, I know the perfect person that's going to be able to create these lines and understands about hair. So that was really exciting. And it's nice to have something super corporate and also to see my work in a very completely different space. I was going to talk a little bit about working in quarantine, because something that I realised moving to Lisbon and kind of taking time to kind of reassess and having like a proper autopsy in a way, was that my work and the heart of what drives my work is collaboration. I love learning about people. I love gaining an understanding of what a person, a client, a brand, a magazine, a space, an environment has to teach me. And it's like any relationship, which is great. It's like, okay, well, what part of me do I need to pull out? What part of me do I kind of need to keep in? Where do I kind of take? And it's kind of like a really lovely experience. And then I come away with something unique, client's happy, and they've got something completely unique too, and I'm learning something along the way. And that's why I have to kind of keep working. So when lockdown happened and I lost a lot of work and a lot of the plans that I had to do large scale work, like a lot of the work that I was doing was live. I was still doing VR work. I did some live work for the opening event for the Land Rover Evoque job. I was doing some live work for Samsung, and you know, it involved me flying, it involved me being out, and it involved me being in spaces and jobs that weren't available anymore. So I just kind of took the time to kind of look inward. I stopped doing portraits because I kept getting booked for portraits, and I was like, I don't want to do portraits. And people would say, okay, right, we want you to do portraits, but can you do like misled portraits? I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that even mean anymore? So I'd stopped drawing faces. I kind of moved away from social media a lot, and it was like, okay, well, what do I want to do and how do I want to do it on my terms? So this is kind of like a study for a large canvas that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm only kind of just showing this now, but it took a bit of practice to kind of look at creating work for me and taking out that kind of sense of I need to show it, I need to show up, I need to kind of constantly be producing to feel that I'm kind of winning and successful on Instagram. So this was like a really interesting kind of learning curve for me, and just started putting things on the wall, pieces of paper, painting, filming myself for me. So I had that kind of tension of working live again and having those feelings and standing up and using my body instead of just sitting on my iPad and just, so that was me kind of taking time and going, okay, what's happening? And then I started the right hand piece. Excuse me, it's very hot here. And this is something that happened before lockdown, and there was Carnival here, which is like a really, really big deal. And this is when the news was kind of happening in China, and we were kind of hearing about the virus. And that kind of just sort of sat in my, on my iPad really, in my computer. And I really, really wanted to continue going back to the work that was really synonymously what I loved, kind of more narrative-based work. And then the middle one was part of a pitch that I did for Coach. And then just because I do love kind of bouncing around and playing with lots of things, I was like, okay, please make a set. So this is something that I'm working on to create a set packaging. So that's self-initiated, kind of. We're going to talk a bit about collaboration because that's really important to me, as I mentioned, a little later down the line. This is one of 2 projects that I did through lockdown, and this was for Hey Nina, and she's a great, this is a partnership between, I think, husband and wife in London, and they are raising funds for young mums, or just mums, especially in lockdown, and this was to support that. It was called the Motherhood Prints, and I really wanted something that had kind of like a really washy feel, very textural, and Pomegranate is about feeling full. It has a theme of empowerment, and I love this idea of this kind of iconic, kind of almost pre-Raphaelite or even pre-Renaissance kind of style woman in the stage of parenthood, motherhood. And this, completely different. I was like, could I actually put these 2 back to back? This again was something that I wanted to do, play around with letters. I was really happy with the way that the T, the A, and the Y and are kind of like, there's this kind of hugging and this kind of support. And I did this with a group of artists in Bristol, and we talked about this in blog, and this was a really lovely project. Again, the voices went to the NHS, and this was a lovely project to kind of collaborate with, be accountable, and just kind of stick with it. Again, it just allowed me to play with something completely different. And from that, I got a really lovely job with Coach, because as we all know, the fashion industry is kind of a bit shaky at the moment, and it's like, when things are rock bottom, how do we kind of sell? How do we, so that was really nice, being able to have this opportunity. I look at it now and I'm like, oh, I could really improve on this, but I know that I'm going to do a lot of kind of work based on this going forward. And yeah, supporting brands deliver joyful messages. And this is the last one. This is one of my favorites. I got to work with this incredible, super dynamic and really joyful artist, photographer and creative director that's based in London, and she's doing so well at the moment. I've known her for a few years and I've always wanted to collaborate with her. And this went through so many phases. This went through so many different, I'm gonna have to put it on my Behance or something. This was wonderful, and I really wanted something that allowed me to bring to other people how important prompts are, and my post-it notes, and how I'd always have something on the wall to kind of keep me going, keep me kind of, you know, embracing how I was feeling and kind of breathing through it, and how important that is. So I know we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to hand over to you, Nikki.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Jo, for talking us through your work. It's beautiful, and I've always been such a big fan. And it's so interesting that a few of the projects have actually come back as a bit of a revival of you being more of like ahead of your time, as you say, with certain designs and illustrations, and that's really, really interesting. That must be great as an artist as well, when some work that you produced 5 years ago then gains different level of like attention and recognition.
Yeah, I think it is only if you like it, because there are sometimes with, this piece that you did like 16 years ago, can you reproduce it with some other bits on? Normally it's not something that I know I'm happy to do, but with that it was just like really fun, and I had to be very economical with that piece, with the wall piece, because it was 3 huge walls, and I was painting it live, and I had to manage a team. It was, yeah, so I was really, really pleased. So that's definitely, I'm planning to do a mural for this very bare wall here. I'm going to collaborate with a friend from LA that lives here and has just started an amazing interior design creative studio. So yeah.
And at what point did you decide you wanted to become an illustrator?
I've always drawn. I've always just when I grew up, my parents, I was part of a forces family, so we moved around a lot, and drawing became this constant. It became my identity. It was something that I always had. When we went to events, my parents went out for dinners, I always had my sketchbook. And I was really lucky. A local artist, when I was 8, offered me a scholarship. And he was like, yeah, you're really good at drawing flower fairies, but how about perspective and rendering? And I've just always been supported. It wasn't until I went to university that I realised that a lot of the people that were in my fine art course were very much against their parents' wishes. So I think, yeah, I've just always done it. It's just been something that, because I did it all the time, I was very confident and I was very skilled, and I just had a lot of kind of, return from it. So
yeah, that's great, especially at 8 as well, to be recognised for having a talent and supported as well. And so you've moved to Lisbon. How long has it been now that you've moved? I can't remember if it's been a year or a few years.
Well, to the locals, it's a year.
Yeah.
But it's actually 2 years, just because I'm so embarrassed about how bad my Portuguese is. So it's 2 years next month.
Oh my goodness, like time flies.
Yeah.
It really does.
And on my second move. So.
And what made you decide to move to Lisbon?
In one word, burnout. But to expand on that, I just really wanted some new inspiration. I really wanted to have different pathways. I always try and find different ways to get to work and different routes, and just wanted a fresh start. I think because I travelled around so much when I was a kid, I always got so excited about a clean slate and new beginnings. So. And 20 years in London for me was enough. I look back at projects and, like I was saying, my solo show I did in 5 days, it would have been a lot. I was in tears at 2 o'clock in the morning going, oh, how can I do this? And you just kind of accept that when you're in London. I think it's like, how far can I push my boundaries? So, yeah, I just wanted to create some white space so I could really go, okay, well, this is what I've done, but what do I want now? And I just wanted to step back a bit from social media. I wrote 2 books and I just took a bit of a risk, and I took my foot off the gas. So good timing for lockdown.
Because it's so interesting that you've moved, because I've been speaking to so many creatives, especially after Brexit, that have been talking about moving to like Amsterdam or Berlin, etc., and leaving London. And how does this new pace of life compare to the London bubble?
It's so completely different. Luckily, I've been in my business for 12 years, and before then I think I did 6 or 7 years as a freelance art workshop leader. So I do have that discipline. I do know how to, I do understand about sacrifice, because it is really hard when you're quite near the beach. The pace is something that I love now, but was like, I had like real teething problems with it. There's a lot of things that you kind of take for granted, like things that are set, like getting set up here without the language and being on my own was really, really difficult, going without hot water or boiler for like 2 months in the winter. And there's a lot of things that you don't have to experience in the UK, but I just needed a proper, like, what you have, a proper work-life balance. And I needed that for my health, and I needed that for my inspiration. And the pace is good for me now, but it was like, oh my gosh. I just know that when things come, they come. And when something arrives, it'll arrive in its own time.
Yeah, same. After living in London for, I think it was 7, maybe 8 years, I then moved to Kent by the sea, like 10 minutes walk to the beach, and then 10 minutes walk to the train station and when that's like 50 minutes in St Pancras. And I've got all my clients in London, like all the creators I work with that I've known for years in London. And yeah, I balance it out where I go into town and I'll meet loads of people, and then I work from home, and that works quite well for me actually. So what are the main tools you use to help you schedule your day?
Well, this is something that I've tried and tested for years. I'm on my 6th bullet journal, and I think a lot of people go bullet journal because they just see loads of people drawing peonies and stuff on it, just making them into like these artistic kind of journals. I definitely need that. I need to have my kind of notes and my priorities there. I need it next to me, and it's nice and neat and it's small. A workflow, that's something that I've developed in the last year, just having everything that I'm working on one page. I did try to do this on a Excel sheet, and I do have stuff like that on an Excel sheet, and I do have an iCal, but I need things out. Even if it's just all in a book, but I need to kind of see it at the beginning of the day. Having a watch, I know that sounds silly, but if I can get a watch and alarm clock, that's a new addition. If I can have my phone out of the room, that really helps me schedule, keep to stuff. And I have a time block sheet as well. Also post-it notes.
So it's all more like post-it notes, paper, materials and tools. Do you have like Trello boards or anything like that, or do you prefer?
I tried Trello boards. I also tried Todoist, but I think it's just I can't rely on notifications. I turn all my notifications off from like social media to email. I make sure that I check my email at, say, after I've done all my scheduling and I know what my day looks like. I'll put in 15 minutes of emailing, and then I'll do it again at 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always, I can't always be available. I won't pick up calls unless they're scheduled, because I need to kind of feel like I have full autonomy of my time and my space. It's so easy to be totally reactive, and I need to be proactive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really interesting actually, for anyone that's watching this session and talking about things like scheduling. And as we said, it's like the headspace as well, of that. It's so tough, isn't it? Because sometimes you can feel like I need to be reactive and jump on this and that and all these different things, but it can slow you down. It's not always the most proactive approach when you're trying to deal with something, especially like a large job or a big commission or something like that. It's actually blocking out your calendar and your time, and saying, right, I'm dedicating this chunk of time to this task at hand, and I'm putting my phone out the room, and I'm ignoring like outside interference, because it can feel like that sometimes, like the outside world, there's always a notification going off. If I'm really busy, I have to take my Apple Watch off, as I'll have Slack, Twitter, Instagram, you know, LinkedIn, emails, and it's just all these mediums pinging at you all the time, and WhatsApp, and then a phone call. And do you think that, I guess technology is a great thing, but sometimes I guess it can really interrupt your flow?
Yeah, it's massively disruptive. It's super disruptive. When I was using it, when I first started using Facebook and Instagram, I was posting like 5 or 6 posts a day, then Twitter and stuff like that. But I was just doing so much. I'd be doing a sketch for this project. I'd be going to a venue. I was like super busy, and I had lots of content. And for me, it was a way of kind of going, done that, got that to that position, and it was all in real time. Or I'd photograph things, and then I'd post it when I was at the post office queue, or in a bus, or waiting for a friend to turn up at a restaurant. But now, like things like social media and email and things like that, it's just, I need to elevate what I'm working on. I need to make sure that feels like the most important thing that I'm doing, and that's just the bottom line for me. And even if it's just, you know, I'm going to get an egg timer. I'm trying to find one at the moment, like a little tomato or something, because I do use my phone for the focus timer app, because I'll put it on for 25 minutes and I'll just bash through work, and then I'll just have a little dance or go for a cup of tea or something, you know, and I'm like, woo, I've done loads, and I don't think about it. My brain's in a different hemisphere. I'm just bashing it out. And there's loads of techniques like that I find really, really good. But it's just, you know, you just have to feel like you're the boss. And I think when everything's just kind of being hurtled at you, you're just not, and you've got overwhelmed. Something that I say to the artists I work with, it's like when you have that moment and you do feel overwhelmed, or you are feeling like, okay, this is too much, yeah, just get up, do something else. Put like a really loud track on, have a dance, make a cup of tea, go for a walk. Because technology has its uses, but it's also very good at kind of grinding us down.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I'd like to discuss with you, Jo, is the Toolbox. So you mentioned this to me recently, and I thought it was genius, like the way that you described it. Would you mind talking us through that now?
Yeah. So I've been connecting with lots of different communities, and I've been learning a lot and doing. Even though I'm a creative mentor, I get a lot of mentoring and coaching myself for business, for mindset. So I've been learning all this great stuff, and these are things that I've accessed because everybody's online virtually, and it's a really nice takeaway. And we were talking about our kind of emergency toolkit, and it's like, what do you do if you break down on the highway and your tire bursts? It's like, oh well, you've got a spare tire in your boot, so you just, you know, get Jack or you phone the AA or something. Maybe on your speed dial or you're on your phone. And what happens if you spill red wine on your lovely white carpet or sofa? You've got like some Vanish, and there's, you know, if you cut yourself, you've got like plasters, and you need to kind of develop and find out. It's really good. So anyone watching, I'd love for you to write 5 things that you have, or you think you can have, or you want to explore using to create your own mental kind of break an emergency toolkit. So when you have those moments, I've been learning a lot about EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which is amazing. And it's about self-talk, it's about using your voice and kind of tapping your different energy points. It's really good when you've got headaches, something that we could talk about another time, but not now. It's a really big, exciting subject. There's, you know, Headspace. You know, they've got loads of kind of emergency little 5-minute apps. You know, sitting with it and going, right, how bad is it? Is it A&E? You know, like, do I need to go and see a doctor? Do I just need to put a plaster on it? Just sitting with it and kind of going, okay, is it a 1 to 5? Okay, maybe it's a 1, okay, just going to get up, put an audiobook on, get a cup of tea. Is it a 3? Right, I'm running the bath. So it's like, what are those 5 things that you've got like accessible? I wrote mine down. I think there was meditation, tapping, EFT, having a cup of tea, going for a walk or running a bath, and having a dance. It's so good to get your body moving and giggling, and yeah, so that's a nice takeaway that I learned in lockdown.
Yeah.
I really love that.
I really like that, the toolkit. I need to write my 5 down. One thing that I use a lot for my own mental health is running. I find the act of running and how I train helps me with running a business. There's some certain like running techniques I'll do when I'm working on like speed and endurance, where I'll run a mile at a threshold pace and then half a mile at a slower pace. And when you're at the threshold, you know, like, you're tired, you're like, oh, this is hard work, but you know you've got half a mile where you can slow down. And that's how I sometimes find, for me personally, running Nikki Lyle Creative can feel like. There are times when it can feel a bit intense, and I'll promise myself a set point where I'll slow it down a little bit. And things like a bit of self-love or self-care, or treating yourself to a film you really want to see, or like a purchase of something that you really want. Or I'm always kind of lining up treats for myself for rewards for good behaviour.
Yeah, rewards are so important.
Yeah,
so important. And we were also talking about organization and productivity and stuff like that, and I've been learning a lot about energetics and how we feel. What do we want to feel, or what do we want to kind of embody? So obviously we want to feel productive, we want to feel, you know, empowered, we want to feel creative, and it's all those kind of points. And it's like, what are those, how can we batch that time? So if it is something like, there's a great book called Eat That Frog, and it's like it's almost like delaying gratification, getting your crappy jobs, the jobs that you hate the most, admin first, and then you've got all your jobs that you love afterwards, so they can be a reward system, or just going out and eating ice cream or something.
One thing I found really useful when I'm incredibly busy is getting up earlier. I find the golden time, I used to do this more, getting up at 5:30. I haven't done this as much during the pandemic, because having to deal with COVID and everything else has been another like emotionally taxing experience, especially at a time where the market's a bit unpredictable. So I haven't put that pressure on myself as much, but I used to find that golden time of quietness, where everyone else is almost the rest of the world asleep. That's when you can really get things done, because then no emails coming through or phone calls or anything, and just really important jobs, like things like admin, that's really can be boring, but it's so important for me. And just a few early rises and going to bed a bit earlier and getting really good sleep as well, I find so important to help me be as productive as possible.
Yeah, getting up early is something that I've been able to do now, because I'm not in a partnership and I don't have to kind of work on anyone else's body clock or whatever. And I'm aiming for 5:30 next month. It does take a long time for me. I'm not naturally drawn to getting up early, but I am just a different person at the moment. I get up at 6 and it takes me 2 hours to do the things that are really important to me. So I'll do my journaling, I'll do some yoga, or I'll try and run. It's really hard because the hills here. It's my excuse. I'll do my meditation, and then I want to have like a long shower, or hang out with the cat and just do stuff. So I feel like I'm owning my day before I'm sharing it with anyone or having to like communicate with anyone else. And early starts are the best. If you want to take over the world, so many people have said this statement: if you want to take over the world, get up an hour earlier or 2.
That is so true, like you say, about if you want to take over the world. And I've read so many studies on people that are successful, and it's just the golden time is around 5:30 or even 5 if you really want to push it. But I've seen it work for myself when I was getting up at that time.
Yeah, sorry, Nikki. And even if you just want to, another thing, maybe you don't want to take over the world, and that's fine. Maybe you don't want to get up at 6, but you can get up a little bit before the other people in the house that maybe you're homeschooling or you're feeding, whether it's a pet or a child or whatever. You know, you're ruling your anxiety. You don't have to rule the world. You're just ruling your overwhelm, and you're kind of checking in with everything. It's so important.
Well, another thing I found has really helped me, it's a game changer, was discovering Stoic philosophy and how that's all about, as you say, Jo, rather than ruling the world, ruling yourself. Yeah. And you can't have an influence outside unless you really do own yourself and your own being and your own mind. And once you've got that sorted and you've got the toolkit as well for how to manage yourself, then things like dealing with stress and anxiety can become much easier to deal with. But it all starts with like yourself, and just like little rituals. Like what rituals do you have?
There's something that I've been living on my own for 6 months. Obviously that's kind of deepened my engagement and awareness with the lockdown. So my rituals, journaling, I had like a massive creative block. I always talk about creative blocks because it's like once you get over them, there's so many techniques. And I had an 8-year creative block years and years and years ago before I started Misled, and a friend gave me The Artist's Way. And since reading that book, I just reread it at the beginning of lockdown, 12 years later, since reading it 12 years ago, I've been doing my morning pages, and there's a lot of really good articles on Medium about the book and the morning pages and how it kind of really, really starts your day. You're kind of almost having a telephone call with yourself, checking in, kind of getting rid of all the cobwebs. So that's something that I do, which is really powerful, and I direct it now. So that could be where I'm like talking about, you know, my message or what I want to talk about on social media or whatever. It's kind of like a solid platform, and it can feed the structure of the day. That's something I've learned a bit more about this year through doing the course that I'm on. Conscious writing, which is like a next level, which is really exciting, which is just like almost kind of like affirmation writing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, because there's like, oh, I can't do this, or I find this really hard, or I'm not really good at strategy or whatever, for example. And you're like, I'm really good at strategy. You just talk about all these things that you're really good at. So I have a journal for if I'm having a wobble, if I'm kind of really inspired by something, if something comes into my mind, then I'll write it, capture it, and if I'm problem solving. So that's a bit of a ritual. My exercise, and I remember speaking to one of my dear friends, an incredible artist, Nuno DaCosta, at the beginning of the lockdown, and I said, so what are you doing? And he's just really chill. Anyway, he's like, I'm napping. And I've always been I've been good at napping, but it is like unbelievably, it makes such a difference. It's like you're like 34%, or something. I'm meant to kind of get the exact statistics, but like your alertness, your concentration, your engagement is it's just so good for your productivity. So I just make sure that I do 20 minutes maximum, because if you go any longer, you go into deep sleep and game over. I was going to talk about setting boundaries. I think that's really important. At the moment, I'm working all the hours God gave me, but I'm kind of loving that anyway, and I know that I will probably be living with someone else at a later date, who will say, can you stop working now, and do you have to work all the time?
Yes.
So boundaries are important, especially if you're getting up early. And, you know, all those things can work. I know I talked about this before in the Wacom webinar. Someone asked, is that still going to work if you like to work at night? And it's like, yeah, it's just having that awareness to go, okay, I know that I'm great at this time and I need to fit in 2 hours of me time before I go to my laptop or the first task of the day, and then I'll time block everything. Lisa Congdon has a really good way of addressing her tasks, and she kind of touches everything, which I really like. So she just does small time blocks of everything. She did an alphabet project over a year, but she just did 50 minutes every day, because she was suffering a bit from anxiety as well, and she wanted to feel like it's almost kind of like you're checking in, and you're like, you're taking it a little step further, and that's really good. That's a really good way of doing it. So then I'll look at the anchors in the day, and my anchor habit would be like having coffee at 12. So I know I've got, I can get a good few time blocks in before then, and a couple of chunks or one big chunk before lunch. I'm really strict. If I am doing something else at lunch, it'll be something I'm really excited about, or reading, or I go for a walk, and and then the nap. So I just have those 3 anchors, and then that helps me guide. And as a woman, I can't believe I've only just found out about cycle planning, within which weeks. That's something that I've been reading about through Forbes. Forbes is a really good resource for productivity articles, and there's a great one on cycle planning, because your brain and your body are working in different ways at different weeks in your kind of your month as a woman. That's kind of blown my mind, so I engage with that as well, and that helps me plan. There's certain times of the month where I'm better at kind of problem solving, and other times where I'm better at evaluating and reviewing, others when I'm communicating and working with teams.
That's so interesting about cycle planning. The only time I've ever looked at that was more within exercise and training, for energy levels. But yeah, I'll look at that in regards to how I apply myself with Nikki Lyle Creative as well.
Yeah, it's a big one. It kind of blew my mind.
There's some really useful tools there that you shared, Jo. Thank you. And I think that this is why we wanted to run this session, is because it's so important for anyone that's watching this to understand that there are rituals and procedures and processes that people do to really help us get through our days and produce the work that we do and hit certain targets. And I think you plan for your day the night before, like I do. I find that so useful. Is the night before I'll kind of set my intention for the next day, and I'll write my to-do list, and just that sleeping on what you need to do the next day, it's almost like you problem solve in your sleep. And then if I'm falling asleep and there's something I need to do, I'll jump out of bed and then I'll put that on the to-do list as well to make sure things get done. Because as you're falling asleep, sometimes I'm working out, did I get everything done? What didn't I get done? And then just jotting that in, then I find that I then sleep a bit better, and I'm like, okay, that's going to be dealt with tomorrow. I did get that done. That's when that's going to happen.
And you're closing that day, you've got that closure, and you're like, okay, well, this didn't work, but this is going forward. Yeah, I think even if it's just 15 minutes, the bullet journal is really good for that too. It's closing the day, doing something, then being on your phone as well.
Yeah. By the way, if anyone wants to ask any questions, feel free to pop those in the Q&A tab. But I just want to speak to you a bit more about journaling. So how do you use it? Is it something where you just offload all the thoughts you've got in your head?
Yeah, I definitely recommend looking at Googling morning pages. Some people can do it in 20 minutes. Mine take an hour. So after 12 years, I've started not writing as much, but you're supposed to write 3 sides of A4, and it's literally just stream of consciousness. So it could be anything that's going on in your mind, and it's just very cathartic. It's very cleansing, and it's just a really nice kind of way of clearing everything when you start the day. So with my exercise, with my coffee, and because I've done it for so many years in that way, I'm just trying it out differently. But a lot of the artists that I work with, because I am a creative mentor as well, I've been doing that this year, since last year, are taking that on, and I've seen like such big leaps with their work and how they look at their work. And it's really supportive when you're going through like a really difficult time. And a lot of my artists here, a lot of my friends here that are and aren't artists have taken it on as well, and they're absolutely loving it. So the morning pages I would definitely recommend. And just having something where you're able to expand out. I guess that's the most basic and kind of easiest way for me to say it. So it's either kind of putting it on paper or using voice notes as well, just to kind of process. It's a new way of processing, because we're constantly giving, we're constantly working out, but there's nothing that we're kind of doing one-to-one with ourselves, you know. And it's when you were saying about when you go to bed and you're thinking about the next thing, that's very much part of the process. The Artist Way is kind of very American. It was released in the 90s. It's now becoming okay to talk about, like Russell Brand interviewed Julia Cameron the other day. Emma Gammon has cited it as like a huge inspiration for a lot of her books that she's written. And she does a lot of stuff on Skillshare that's like, that's very Julia Cameron. And it's very much about, it's kind of like a bit Buddhist, it's a bit godly, and it's very much about you are a conduit for inspiration. So there is, you know, a flow of inspiration. So it's really good whether you replace that with the universe or whatever, you know, the God word. It's really good to know that there is, you know, when you've got an open mind, when you've got intentions, when you're writing, when you're kind of opening your mind to what you need and the awareness that you have through this stream of consciousness every day, is there's like a sense of flow that happens, and it takes a lot of pressure off kind of this kind of constant kind of I'm doing everything. It's kind of you're sort of supported by the nature of the flow, and inspiration is constantly there. Your ideas are constantly there. You just need to kind of apply it and take yourself away from all those kind of those other distractions. And I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years. When I got the book, I didn't even finish it. My life kind of, it just went insane overnight, and I definitely have that to thank, because it gave me that word that I use a lot, autonomy. It gave me empowerment. It gave me a time which was very meditative, but it was very kind of process led. And I was, you know, the interviews that I was writing and the posts, and I was like, my language was very lucid, my mind was very clear. I had like a real sense of ownership of that. So I definitely recommend Jim in that respect.
Yeah, I love that whole thought of, you know, you're a conduit for like information, like your consciousness, all of our consciousness, we tune into the universe, and then we regurgitate what we see, or like a prism of our own experience of it, and then what we create is a product of that. And like my friend that set up like TED Talks and folks, and she talks about ideas all the time, and how the best speakers, you get loads of people that want to get on their soapbox and they're like, look at me, that's ego talking. But actually the best speakers, it's all about the idea, and they're just the messenger. As an artist, a creative, whether you're a musician or an illustrator, or all you're doing is carrying something and putting that out into the world and projecting that.
Totally. I've got something written here actually. Sorry, did I interrupt you, Nikki? Sorry.
No worries. I've just realised we've got a couple of questions to whiz through as well.
Oh, amazing. I didn't see them. I've got here actually, and this is from the Artist Way, because I just finished it. I really eked it out. I didn't want it to end. And this is saying what we're talking about. And it says, the creative process is a moment of surrender, not control. And it's this, you know, this is why it's so important to kind of harness that time and to harness that kind of ownership and just let go, and it will come. And it's all about trust, it's all about faith. And
what I found as myself as a creative recruiter, like the moment I took that approach of I'm here to service the industry and just to create myself as a bridge that just connects, and that's my job, is to serve the industry, and just that and how I work and how I operate with creators I represent or clients has just been a game changer, and that's how I've worked for you. And I guess that's what's always set me apart from other recruiters, is I've got that different mindset in how I kind of service the industry. But right, let's dive into some of these questions. Honestly, Jo, I could talk to you for like
I know.
But okay, so thank you for this amazing talk. What were your initial steps in setting boundaries?
Okay. One of the reasons that I moved here was that I would be in an environment where I was like going to have a good sense of live work. I mean, boundaries within your day structure, then yes. If I try and get up early so I can finish early, so I can do the things that I hear and live the life that I want. Is there another way that you think we could answer that, Nikki?
About
boundaries, it's such a big question, isn't it, really?
Or start realizing that you need to set boundaries is like the number one thing, because not just turning up and producing that needs to be produced, actually stepping back and saying, hang on a minute, I'm going to set a boundary about this, which relates to self-care and like the pace of London especially. And I just think deciding that a boundary is something you want to set first, and why and how, and then you set them accordingly. That would be
and that could be with the people that you work with on projects. I think that's one thing that's good for me with the bullet journal, and I'm not always like super structured, because something that I've learned, especially this year, is like my brain doesn't work like that. I'm a creative, but I love discipline. So I'll go, right, and this hour I'm doing this, and then I'm gonna have a cup of tea, and I'm gonna do this, and then I've got it all set out. And then other days, I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to write a list of the things that I've done, and that's enough. I've achieved this, and this is going to keep me on a flow momentum. But within, I guess we're talking about boundaries as well, about, that's even like what we talked about, like taking your notifications off, making sure that you're doing things with a bit of awareness. Like, okay, I'm going to do half an hour or 15 minutes of my email twice a day, and it will be at this time. Also, really looking at when you're at your most energetic and engaged and planning around that. And, for me, like, I'll nap when it's like 38 degrees and I can't work and I'm dying.
Yeah. And I found like certain boundary setting with just restricting certain people's like access to you at a certain time, like you said, with turning off notifications, and sometimes always being available doesn't help you be the most productive, because actually at a time of being productive is when you shut off the outside world and you focus at the task in hand.
Totally.
But so the next question is, when did you both decide enough is enough? I need to move out of London. I know you mentioned the project you had to finish in 3 days, Joanna. What was this the breaking point? Also, your studio behind you looks wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, plants really help, don't they? Gosh, that was a while ago, actually. I just wanted to show that because I'm just still really happy with that show, and that it was my project. But that was 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Gosh. They were just my anxiety just got crazy, actually. I just got very, very anxious. There's a lot of things that have changed now, and I think also what I realized and what I think about, which which is a shame, is the things that I want from London, the things that I want to cherry pick from London, for me were I just couldn't do it. I was always so busy and taking so many things on and going to the tape, and it just being swarming with people and queuing and getting on tubes, and I just got really worn down by public transport, and I moved with a partner at the time out of London a bit, and I hated where I lived, and it was just a bit of everything. I think I should have moved a lot earlier, really. It was just a bit of everything. Thanks, Nita.
Yeah. And so the next question is, great talk, thank you. Do you feel it's more important to create work with the aim to attract clients, or to create work that feels right but with no agenda, or maybe a bit of both?
Yeah, that does make sense. I kind of came up with this thought when I was mentoring one of my artists earlier this year, and she was just really, she wanted to work with me every couple of weeks, but she was already doing like this huge counselling degree. So I just said, well, why do we do art? And I said, and how can art be for us, and it's not just about for other people? And I said, there's 3 ways that we can look at it, and art can be really nourishing. So I said, look, I don't want you to do I don't want to give you a to-do list. Maybe you could just get one, because she was trying to do some watercolor stuff on her iPad. I said, why don't you just sit down and have like an art hug I came out with. I was like, where you're just sitting there and you can like maybe see how many different colored blue clouds you can make. And it's just something where it's just, I'm just, it's all about the process. I'm not thinking about it. And then there's other times where you're experimenting and you're doing something where, what you're talking about, surrendering to a process. And then there's projects where you want the work to be in your folio. Well, the work that I've found for like some of the big brand jobs that I've done, so like Head and Shoulders, Clinique, Ted Baker, the work that they've shown on their PDF, on the brief, has always been the work that I've either done on a sofa or in bed, where I've just like not been feeling so great, and I've just gone, I'm not working today, and this is just something that I'm enjoying. And that's the stuff that generates work. So sometimes it's good to kind of understand what you want from the work, but as long as you've got all of those things in mind, because you want to still feel like you're enjoying it, that it's nourishing, you're experimenting, but it is really good when you're doing a project. And that's something that I'm working on at the moment, giving myself briefs. So I'm looking at repeated pattern, for example, or what would look great on packaging, and how many in a series would I need. And that's really good because it gives us a little bit of a steering, and it helps us navigate. So I hope that answered your question.
I mean, one advice I always give creatives is imagine, more for like graphic designers really, is imagine yourself like a jigsaw puzzle piece. And it's a collection of work which shows where you've been but where you want to go, and there's nothing stopping someone doing like self-initiated projects or work or briefs, rather than just focusing on the stuff that pays your bills or puts a roof over your head. Just whatever you're interested in, and you gravitate towards producing work like that, and you never know, that might attract the kind of clients that you then want to work with. Which I guess when you get a commission for a huge bit of work, ideally it'll be something you'll want to work on, or you'll be excited to work on. But I think that's all the questions. So I guess we'll wrap up the session here, because we've been talking away for an hour. But again, thank you so much, Jo. Like, I've really, really enjoyed today, and I hope everyone that's tuned in has as well. And feel free to post about the event on like Instagram or Twitter, and give us a shout out so we can let more people know. And you've shared so many amazing tips and insights as well. I'm going to be rewatching this and making my own notes actually from everyone you've mentioned that I want to take some inspiration from. Yeah, thank you, Jo.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody that bought a ticket and is joining us. So nice to be here. I'm really honoured to be one of your industry leaders. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, and have a good day. And take care, everyone.
Bye.